Welcome to the MHS High School Podcast, the online radio voice of MHS. I'm Eddie Kalegi, joined by Josh Hyman and Sarah Terracino. We hope everyone's been doing well. Crazy to think we're coming up on 7 weeks tomorrow since the last time we were in school. It's been a long time now with virtual school and distance learning. But it's great to be joined today by Justin Manley from the Board of Ed. Mr. Manley, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
So the first thing I just got to ask you, how have you been dealing with everything with the pandemic, and how have you and your family been coping and just taking care of things?
Great question. Thanks. So I've been doing well, personally, thank you. My kids are all healthy. My family, my extended family are all healthy and doing well. When people ask me, I often just say, my kids and family and I are well. My job and my company are secure. What more could I really ask for at this time, right?
Yeah.
There are so many who are struggling, both in Metuchen, New Jersey, the New York area, and across the country and the globe, with things that are, really, really troubling. And my heart goes out to them and those who are dealing with that. I'm the father of three. I've got two MHS graduates who are in college, and then a freshman at Metuchen High School. So my college students are home, and my high school student is home. So it's and I'm working from home, so it's been fun. Thankfully, we've got a decent internet connection, so we're getting along.
Yeah, that's something you always have to think about right now. So, next thing I wanted to ask you is just about your position with the Board of Ed. How did you first become involved with the Board of Education? And for people who don't know, what is like the tasks that go along with doing so?
Sure. So, Board of Ed. I first ran for the Metuchen Board of Ed in 2005. I actually lost by 4 votes. For those who don't know, I'm actually a Metuchen High School graduate. This is 1990, so I'm celebrating my 30 years of being out of Metuchen High School. I was on student council back then, and have just always been involved in kind of politics and helping and being on committees and doing whatever I could. I was on City Council 2008 to 2011, and honestly, didn't really like it that much. Didn't like the politics of it. I wanted to do stuff for the town. I didn't really want to be involved arguing as much as we were trying to find consensus and moving forward, and kind of took a step back and got out of it. A couple years later, I was interested in, I really approached the Board of Ed as a concerned parent. My sons and a bunch of students who were at Edgar and younger schools were playing ice hockey. Mm-hmm. And Edison parents were looking to partner with us. So we went to the Board of Ed and asked if we could, put the team together and form a high school team. And the board at the time wasn't very interested in that. So I kind of got motivated and volunteered by the group to, hey, you should run for the Board of Ed. And I did. So I'm completing my 4th year on the board. I ran once and was reelected, and last year became president of the board. The president of the board is chosen by the board themselves. Mm-hmm. There's 9 members of the Board of Education. Each January, we kind of reorganize and decide who's going to be president, who's going to be vice president, and then those 2 individuals decide who's on what committees. We have a bunch of different committees. Taking out my notes to make sure I don't miss any of them. But what the board really is, its job is to set policy and goals. We're not involved in the day-to-day management of the schools. When I try to map the Board of Ed, from a government structure back to, say, the borough, Dr. Caputo, as a superintendent, is probably more like the mayor. So he's really the chief executive officer, and his job is day-to-day to do everything. The Board of Ed then is really like the council. We're kind of setting the goals, we're setting the policies, but we're not making the day-to-day decisions. We're kind of telling the administration through Dr. Caputo, here's what the community would like, and then it's his role to really implement that. We break down into committees. We have technology committee, policy committee, curriculum committee, finance committee, and an extracurricular. And those are all different areas that impact the student experience through all the grades. And as I mentioned, there's 9 of us. A committee is usually made up of 4 members of the board, so you can't actually do something in committee, right? Because it would take 5 of 9 to actually enact something, along with members of the administration. So whether that's Dr. Caputo, whether that's the assistant superintendent, there's other members who, whether it's the principals, sometimes the athletic director for extracurricular. We've got a business administrator that does a lot of stuff with finance. So there's always a member of the administration that works with the committees, and then we just kind of go through the tasks as need be. The administration, whether it's the superintendent or the principals or whatever, ask us for advice, guidance, and our thoughts. There's members of the board who try to enact things, who try to say, like, well, I think we should do X. And that usually goes through committee, and it would come up to the board. If it's recommended by the superintendent, then we would take action and vote on it. But that's kind of high level, I think, of what the organization does. It's my job, really, to just kind of make sure the board functions as president. The tasks, additionally to what I just mentioned, is really to protect the board. And I often am kind of the conduit, the day-to-day conduit between the administration. So I'm probably talking to the superintendent, the business administrator, the board attorney, more than anybody else in the board, kind of day-to-day. As they're advising me of things that are happening, I then have to get the board involved when it's needed.
So very interesting, and I liked what you said a couple minutes ago. An interesting choice by you to get involved with, like, the Board of Education when you talked about how politics, sometimes just with politics, there's a lot of bickering, a lot of party v. party, but really with the Board of Education, the goal is everyone working together to try to help out the younger generation. So I got to ask you, what is your favorite part about being on the Board of Education?
My favorite part is really serving with the members. The members and the administration, we don't always agree on everything, but they're my friends. They're people that I really respect. We have a diverse group of folks from our backgrounds, right? We've got people who are in business, we've got people who are in education, we've got people, teachers, we've got a group of people that I think are just really strong and committed. And you're right. We're all there. We are paid $0, right? So it's a complete volunteer job. All of us. Only one of the 9 members right now doesn't have an active student in the school system, but he's got a daughter who's a senior in college and a daughter that's a freshman in college. They both are out of MHS recently. But everybody's a parent, right? So we're not some people in faraway land making decisions that are impacting people. They're impacting our kids, right? So I enjoy the people part of it, I guess.
So I'm going to turn it over to Josh now, because Josh actually was on Snapchat seeing if anybody had some questions for you. So Josh, take it away.
Yeah, I do have a few questions. Actually, we just had one come in right now. So the first question I'm going to address or ask you is, does the school district have plans of reopening in September?
That's a great question. And if it were up to me alone, the answer would be yes. Here's what I hope. So first of all, I'm going to answer the technical side of the question. The governor of New Jersey is deciding that right now. So Governor Murphy is going to make the decision for all schools across New Jersey. So it's really not up to the board. It's not up to Dr. Nobody in Metuchen is actually going to make that decision. Once Governor Murphy says we can, then how we would go about implementing that would then really fall on us as an administration. Personally, I just hope at a minimum we get a week or 2 weeks for you guys to come back and at least socialize. I'm not going to pretend that in the last week of June anybody's going to learn anything, right? But if you could just come back and see your friends. I'm not going to suggest hug your friends because that would not be social distancing, right? But at least just be in the same space and be together and have kind of some closure, I think, on the year would be valuable. I want there to be a graduation if we can. I don't know, when we'll be able to do that. But these are big events that I don't think should be missed. So fingers crossed we get to do something. So.
All right, thanks. On to the next question. So this is a concern among, juniors and seniors, and that was whether or not the fourth cycle grading would be changed to pass or fail instead of a percentage.
Yeah, it's not. So I don't know if you've seen what the guidance is. The guidance is 28% for the first, second, and third marking period, and 16% for the fourth marking period. And that decision was heavily debated by a lot of people. It wasn't a decision by the board. It's ultimately a decision made by the administration. And it wasn't just Mr. Paragallo. It was, all the supervisors, the administrators talking through what was the best thing. Typically, we see, the goal is progress, right? So we would hope that a student who gets a lower grade in the first marking period kind of goes up, and does well. We've never dealt with this scenario where suddenly that is cut off, right? And we're seeing different students behave, score or do differently in this environment. So you've got some students who, excelled in the classroom are really struggling with remote learning. We've got students who struggled in the classroom who are excelling in remote learning. So what we came up with was a compromise. There were some people who wanted, pass-fail, and that would have had zero impact on your GPA. So if you do pass-fail in the fourth marking period, but you have grades in the other, then the final grade would have been really the average of the first three cycles. And that we felt really wasn't fair either, because that really hurts the student who is making progress at the end of the year. But how do we protect the student who's suddenly struggling, right? There's people who you're not just dealing with schoolwork, but maybe their parent is sick, or they lost a grandparent, passed away. Those are hard things to deal with at any given time, let alone in an environment where you can't even tap into your social network, see your friends, have that kind of, those feelings and care that people give to each other. So I think that the choices that were made on the grading really were trying to accommodate everybody. There's 800 of you in Pawdcast High School, and the choices were tough. None of them work for everybody. Mm-hmm. So I think the compromise that they came up with is what's best.
All right, and on to the next question. Because of the shutdown of the schools, a lot of kids are going to miss out on these big trips or events in their school year. For example, the fifth grade camping trip and the eighth grade Six Flags trip. So is there going to be any sort of makeup for these trips? And if not, is there going to be any sort of like compensation or makeup for them?
Yeah, it's another great question. And the answer is, on some of them there may be, some of them there may not be. I've heard talk for the fifth grade camping trip that maybe next, if things, we don't know what's going to happen, right? So I can't commit to anything, because we get a second wave of coronavirus, and all next year is also remote learning. If we take the thinking that this thing is on the decline and it's going to continue in that trajectory, and that next year is going to be normal, then I've heard the idea about, well, why don't we do the sixth graders, which would be this year's fifth graders, do a fall camping trip, right? So that's one idea I've heard to, get those kids something. You can't, for prom, I don't know how you would redo that, right? Because if you can't do that until next year, well, half those students are going to be off in college. So, there's just, on each one, there's different ones. I think, there's we were talking at the board meeting last night, the Galapagos Islands trip that I know Mr. Giddis is working on. That there's actual real money involved with that, right? So parents have paid for that. Some of the costs they're able to get back. They gave the parents, I think, choices. There's some refund. They're getting a certificate that they can roll over to a future trip. There's different options. I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but they're trying to deal with those things. But I mean, the disruption is big, and I think there's a lot of people thinking about how can we do do, something for these students that are missing stuff. So.
Yeah, you mentioned the Galapagos Islands trip. I was actually supposed to go on the Poland trip run by the social studies program. That got canceled, and they did give us the options for the voucher either to use on a future trip. You could sell the voucher, or you could use it for like a week-long study program.
Right.
And I know that they're trying to schedule at least the Poland trip for some time in either late July or August, but I don't really know about the Galapagos trip. And the last question I have is, due to the drastic changes that are coming to the AP exams, considering now it's only online in 45 minutes, is there going to be any sort of, refund or compensation for families who have paid lots of money to take the traditional test?
That's a good question. That's not one that's within the purview of the Metuchen Board of Education. The AP test is run by the college boards, and those decisions are beyond us. I haven't heard in any of the things I've read or said that they're planning on doing a refund. That's a good question. That's one that I don't know off the top of my head, but I could look into it and find out for you guys.
You can refund, yeah, for sure. The college board said that you would be allowed to up until you took the test.
That's good.
That's good.
Thanks, Sarah.
Mm-hmm. All right, so Sarah, is there anything you want to ask?
Oh, yeah, so I'm a senior, so you know what I'm going to ask you now, and I hate to ask it, but I always do, is if we miraculously do go back to school even for a week, would that open up a possibility for a graduation ceremony or like a senior gala for that closure?
I sure hope so. I mean, I graduated from Metuchen High School, like I said earlier, 30 years ago this June. I can still remember it, mostly because it rained that day and we were in the gym and it was hot as hell. But it was, to answer your question, Sarah, I really, really hope so. That would be my goal. I mean, Jared, my son, graduated last year. Alexa graduated 3 years ago. My daughter. Those are very special moments for our family. The fact that I got to speak last year at Jared's was incredible and something I will never forget. And I hope the seniors, we do something. Jared's girlfriend's a senior at Edison. I've seen some change.org things are going around trying to say do it in July or August. So I've seen all kinds of things, and we're gonna do what we can. I hope we can find something. So we haven't closed the door that we're definitely not doing June, right? So if Governor Murphy comes and says that's the case, then we'll start looking at alternatives.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine a scenario where we send you guys off and like, hey, good luck, go to college, it's real, right? So.
Yeah, I really appreciate hearing you say like you haven't closed the door yet, because I feel like online, you get like a lot of like negativity, people being like just shut it down. Like, no, like this is important to some of us.
No, it's important to a lot of people. It's important to me. I mean, I can only imagine if this was last year and Jared's coming up on, I'd be freaking out as a parent. I'm sure your parents are, you guys are too, and it's, it's real. And there are some people who diminish it, and I don't, that's fine, and don't come if you don't want to come. But the rest of us who want to have something, we need to find a safe way to do it, right? I don't know what that looks like. We're going to use the whole football field or something, but it'll be. We've got to be able to figure this out. Right? We've got to be able to do something. I've heard the drive-by graduation. I don't really like that idea.
Would you be open to letting the senior student council help you plan that closing ceremony if we would ever get to have one?
That's an absolutely fantastic idea that I haven't heard, but I would love to do. I would love for your feedback. So that would be,
yeah, the class of 2020 has tons of like support from the student body and ideas. Like we're talking about it very often in online.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's a wonderful idea. I like that. I'll make sure I mention that to Dr. Caputo. So.
Thank you.
All right. Well,
Are you going to Louisiana State?
No, this is just a teacher. I'm going to Rutgers.
Oh, cool. To study what?
Aerospace engineering.
Ooh, you're a rocket scientist. Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
This does not break surgery.
Well, Mr. Manley, we hope everything is well with you, and thank you so much for everything you and the rest of the Board of Ed has been doing to try to help us try to maintain as much normalcy as possible during this distance learning time, and really hoping for Sarah and the rest of the seniors that we can have something for them.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate that you're keeping this going. I'm glad that you guys are doing this, and I love the work. Keep doing it. It's good stuff.
So thank you to Mr. Manley and for Sarah Teresina and Josh Hyman. Remember to keep following us right here on Twitter at MHS Pawdcast for updates about future shows coming up. For all of us, I'm Eddie Kalegi. We'll see you next time. This is the Metuchen High School Podcast, the online radio voice of MHS. Have a great rest of your day.